In there now. A few more might join us with 31 minutes past. I think we'll kick off. So yeah, evening everyone. Thank you for joining us on a cold, dark autumn evening. It's soon got dark. I've been out and about with our regional pitch advisor Chris, who's on the call. We'll go through the majority of the content this evening today. A range of grass pitch sites and looking good for the season. Had a lot of change, and this workshop specifically is around the in-season maintenance, if I can say it. Our first one of this season's grass pitch workshops. We've had a range of in-person machinery workshops scattered around sort of the northeast region, and this is the first of 3 that we're running this season, similar to previous seasons for those who've joined us, or this might be your first one. These are very informal. Please use the Q&A function within the Teams channel to ask questions. We've got a few different County FA members, myself at Sheffield Hampshire, Tom at West Riding, Chris at North Riding, and Jade at Sheffield Hampshire as well. We're picking up any questions, but there will be an opportunity to ask a few bits at the end as well. Any specifics to Chris. A lot of content to go through. Should be done within an hour and a half or so, I reckon. And it will be recorded, shared after, along with the slide deck, probably early next week, for people to relook at, or for anyone who was unable to join for whatever reason as well. So without further ado, I will pass over to the grass guru himself, who looks after our North region, supports us as County FAs and the clubs and sites who have their grass pitches and accessing the funding or looking to access the funding to go through the first of this season's in-season maintenance workshops. That's all right, Chris?
Yes, cheers, mate. Thank you. Can everybody hear me okay? Tom just gives a thumbs up because I can see you on screen. Yep, brilliant, excellent. Good evening, welcome to this session. So as Leon pointed out, I'm going to run through some in-season maintenance tips off the back of what has been a challenging year weather-wise, certainly been a very poor growing year across the land-based industry, and that has had a significant effect on surfaces. So I'm hoping to just be able to provide you with a bit of guidance on recovery and what you can do to protect and maintain or potentially improve your pitches during the playing season. This is, as Leon points out, the first of 3 webinars that I'll run during the football season, where I will take you through the different challenges and discuss potential options that you've got. So for those that don't know me, I am Chris Hunter. As Leon pointed out, I work for quite a lot of different county FAs. So I work for 6, the 4 Yorkshire counties and the 2 northeastern counties, Durham and Northumberland. So my background is worked across multiple sports, football, golf and rugby. I've worked in the industry since pretty much I left school. So I've been in roughly around 20 years. I've got experience as well as being a sports turf tutor and assessor, where I worked at Askham Bryan College. And my qualifications include a honours degree in turfgrass science and management, and I also have my spraying certificates, meaning that I am up on all the skills and knowledges needed for crop protection. So I'm going to take you through a range of different pointers and guiding with my experience and my understanding of the industry, where it is, and so what you can potentially do to improve and maintain your pitches. So I work for the Grounds Management Association, and we have a link into the county FAs and with the Football Foundation, where, as Leon said, we work alongside, whether that be skilled professionals in the elite industry or grassroots or community-based football clubs, organisations, where we basically promote the industry. The industry is not very well known, certainly has its challenges, and the guys on the ground who are carrying out the works as volunteers will probably know that, with the challenges that you get from trying to educate your own clubs on why you're doing things and why things need to happen. So we own and operate Europe's most premier grounds management show, which is Soltex, which is coming up in November. If you do wish to attend, please ask for information and I can send you information on that. So there'll be a range of speakers and there'll be lots of different machinery on display where you can go around and you can have a look at the industry's latest innovations. That is at Birmingham NEC Event Centre. We are the home of Grounds Week, where we've had national coverage trying to promote the industry using professional football clubs and try to ensure that is based around major events such as the FA Cup, etc. So we do have our own industry awards as well, which are coming up. They are focused on every level of the sport and a range of different industries as well, including rugby league, rugby union, cricket, tennis, bowls, and horse racing. So we don't just deal with football. So the pitch advisory service, which is what my job is. So I am a regional pitch advisor. So I'm funded by the Football Foundation and by Sport England, working for the FA, trying to provide support and assistance. So they use my expertise as a regional advisor to try and guide clubs in terms of what they're doing with their funding. Even if you don't have funding, what clubs can do to improve maintenance practices to basically deal with the amount of play that we're getting on football pitches, natural grass pitches, which in this country, the majority of them are clay-based, which is not ideal ground conditions for a football pitch, as some of you will be aware. So we do have a membership to the JMA, so you can join. Some of you may be members who've done the funding, or you've carried out, got machinery, whether that be the grass pitch maintenance funding. So if you are a member, you can get access to discounts on training, on our turf care advisory service, and different other aspects of the industry that we support. You can get free parking at Saltex as well if you come to the NEC. And you also get access to Ask the Expert, which is kind of a level above me, where you speak to one of our senior consultants if needed. But to be honest with you, most of the time I direct that anyway, if I have any questions or concerns of things that I find on site or queries that come through to me. So that is an overview there of the Turf Care Advisory Service. I don't want to go too much into it, but basically we deal with constructions as well as a general agronomy advice. So if you're looking to build some new football pitches, what common ones are that people have got agricultural land that they want converting, the pitches are draining poorly, we may look at putting drainage into pitches. Irrigation has obviously been a common one that's come about this year and in past years when we've had dry spells, where people are looking to be able to get the infrastructure to be able to play the sport, especially in those areas that really don't have much access to artificial pitches, which is something that we've worked with a range of clubs on, and we've basically managed the site from investigation all the way through to delivery. So if you are interested in any of them services, please do let me know. So I'm going to move on to in-season maintenance. And I'm going to discuss what we can do going forward to try and maintain and improve pitch quality. Now, typical in-season maintenance practices, mowing, and I'm going to go into a little bit more depth on each one, but kind of an overview of what I'm going to discuss. Line marking, decompaction, aeration, slitting, surface grooming, fertilizer application, goal mouth repairs, renovations. I'll touch a little bit on that, although it's a little bit difficult when we've got no growing conditions, but I can discuss methods that you can use to prevent severe wear, overseeding, and drainage system maintenance. One of the key ones on goal mouth repairs is that the club buys into what you're trying to do and what you're trying to achieve, and actually listens to orders such as not playing in goal mouths, which typically tends to happen, especially those sites that are open and they've got fixed goals. And you're getting just general recreational play from the community. But I'm going to go into a little bit more depth on each one. But before I do, I'm just kind of putting this question to everybody. It's a question I've been asking myself. I've been in and around the industry now for, as I say, 20 years. In that time, things have sufficiently changed, not in just ways of innovation of sports turf equipment, but the weather. The weather is throwing challenges every year, whether that be wet weather, whether that be warm weather. Some of the gales we've had, we haven't really seen many cold conditions, which actually does the soil some good, and leads to no questions about playability. So if the pitches are frozen, nobody ever really wants to play on them, because they understand that they're dangerous to play on, and they potentially can't see no line markings, and it becomes a different question. But one thing that does become a question is when surfaces are wet and people walk over them and say, we think they're playable. or when they're too firm and they're too dry, such as what we've seen this year. Now, I just pulled off several newspaper headlines here. The hosepipe ban throughout this year obviously caused problems, and as you'll see there, we've had droughts up in pretty much the north of England where hosepipe bans have been in place. That has led to really, really poor growing conditions and real difficulties across the region. I've been inundated with inquiries about what can we do? Is everybody in the same boat? Is anybody doing anything that's different? Is anybody trying something that potentially is working in another area? The answer is it's not really. There's nothing really that you can do. Without water, grass can't grow. And it's been a really challenging year. I've been to some pitches that have been literally burnt off. The good thing is that the grass does come back, which we're starting to see. Now we've went into a little bit of a wetter September and into October. And as we're near the end in October, so we've had maybe about 6 weeks of good growing conditions. It took a while for the soil temperatures to get up to the ideal moisture rate that we're looking for to be able to enhance germination and give some germination. But I mean, prior to that, over previous summers, so if you're looking at last summer, we had a really wet winter the year before, and it was really difficult to get on pitches. So the amount of money that I've seen wasted over the last few years in this role from people putting down seed where they're just feeding birds, it's not going into the ground because it can't get in. Even when they're drilling, it's becoming really, really difficult to get it into the soil. And it's becoming even harder and harder and harder to try and find a time when to do this. And it's all right in a professional world. End of season renovations are absolutely fantastic when you've got a full-on infrastructure of irrigation, you've got drainage, you've got undersoil heating, you've got everything that you need to be able to carry out these maintenance practices. Whereas on a community-based football pitch, we're reliant on the environment, and the environment has thrown out many different challenges over the last few years. And I've kind of been a big advocate over the time for splitting your seeding. So if you're seeding at 35 grams per square metre, can you potentially split that and do it twice and do it at 17.5 grams per square metre? I understand that has additional costs, but I mean, we literally came out of really cold conditions and the temperatures soared. They got up and there was barely any recovery in spring this year. There was barely any growth at all throughout the whole of pretty much last November through to September. We had hardly any growth patterns, and it really becomes difficult to get your timing of your renovations right, especially when you don't have the infrastructure. Like, I mean, if we started wasting, see there, the hosepipe ban, water is expensive. People say to me, oh, well, I'm thinking about recycling water from here, there, and everywhere. You're looking on average, you need a 10,000 litre tank to be able to irrigate a pitch in one day at the height of the summer this year. And that's just one pitch. So to be able to store the amount of water that's needed and to be able to get access to that amount of water would be very, very costly. And it increases the cost of renovations rather than just trying to work with the environment. Now, the environment over the last few years, I would say September, October have been the best times to carry out your renovations, the back end of August, because even in March and spring, we've seen it being really difficult to get onto the pitches to be able to carry out renovations because they're too wet. And I've seen pitches have been rested throughout the summertime when it's really difficult to try and germinate grass. So, but the sort of alternative to that is that the pitches are really firm, so it's really difficult to be able to play on them. The impact of injuries, etc., that may come from playing on really firm, dry surfaces. So it's just a question that I'm putting out there at the moment, and one that I really do have is end of season renovations right for grassroots football in this current climate. Do we need to the best results I've seen over my time in this role, bearing in mind I've been in 3 years, have been those that have carried out renovations little and often. So just tiny little renovations to be proactive as possible throughout the playing season, which in the elite world clubs do. So they do constantly doing little renovations as well as having their main end of season renovation. But if you start scarifying grass this year and you're trying to overseed, you can't aerate, you can't get the tines in the ground. It kind of has a knock-on effect. And yeah, at the moment, I'm questioning when the correct time is, and you've got to work with the conditions, unfortunately.
what I've just done there, Chris, as well, I know you can't see my screen, is I've just put a question, are embassies and renovations worth in the grassroots game? Just to get some feedback. So if people are eager to do renovations on their site already, or have had troubles like Chris has mentioned this season, sure we'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Please feel free to just add some comments in the Q&A chat. Actually,
the thing was last year as well is that the wet conditions meant we had a fixture congestion, so the season ran longer. So then people didn't want renovation works because eventually when you could play football, you wanted to be on them. And then we saw a prolonged season. So then you got into May, June time, the back end of May, June. Last year was a one-off, but if you look here, the warmest summers in the last 10 years, got 2025, which obviously this year, which has been the warmest summer we've ever had on record. You got 2022, 2023. So out of the last 4 years, we've had 3 of the hottest summers that we've ever had. So it's been really, really difficult and really, really challenging. I've been out on some sites today, and what actually is happening is because the soil's been that dry, and obviously any kind of nutrition or any kind of energy that plants have got, the store in it within the roots, but the root growth is really, really weak because it's become prone to drought and it's started to burn off. So it's storing anything it possibly can, and the root growth is that weak because it's used all its energy reserves over the summer, and then all of a sudden it's got to winter and it's got barely anything left, and there's weak rooting. So this year aeration is going to be really, really key for recovery. So whether that be slitting, whether that be regularly grooming with just shallow time slitters that you've got, vertidraining is a key one. Vertidraining now, conditions are absolutely brilliant to be able to fracture the soil. It's not too saturated at the moment. A lot of water that's in the soils is sat at the top. We've got a lot of build-up of water on the surfaces following the rain that we've had over recent weeks. And we've also got a prolonged growing season. Soil temperatures this year got up to plus 30 degrees with the heat, which is really unheard of. And at the moment, soil temperatures are still near enough 12 degrees. Need to be above 8 for growing. Daylight hours are dropping, but there is potential chance over the next 3 or 4 weeks, depending on where you are in the country. If you're further up north, you may not get as long. But there is potentially a little window for being a little bit proactive. The need for nutrition when we're looking for recovery. So there's key nutrients within the soil that the soils need to be able to recover from, such as your nitrogen. I'll go into a little bit more depth in that as I go through this presentation. But your nitrogen, your phosphorus, your potassium, all these are key. Potassium being a key one, as that is a driver for drought resistance and for recovery from drought. Is that you need to be able to be applying nutrition if you possibly can. To enhance recovery and get a good sward. Height of cut must be optimum. The amount of pitches that I've seen at the moment that are cutting at 20 mil, it's really, really difficult for a pitch to recover when the height of cut's that low. I'm going to move on to mowing in a minute, so I am going to kind of guide that. But the height of cut, and one thing to take from this is the height of cutting is the most important thing you'll do. You can spend all the money on seed, you can spend all the money on fertilizer, but if you're cutting too low, it's just going to have a build up of problems. Weak root growth. I fear for pests this year, the likes of Schaefer grubs. Conditions at the moment are great for spraying preventative measures for that. So speak to your local amenity provider if you're looking at that, or your contractor, for those that have been prone to it in the past, because I've been out on 2 sites today and I found Schaefer grubs in both of them, quite high up, living off the roots. They eat away the roots, then the grass gets kicked out and it has one knock-on effect after another. So mowing. So why do we mow regularly? Obviously to maintain the pitch at a suitable height to play the sport that we're playing on. In this case, it's football. That picture above is actually a picture of a site in East Riding, where we've worked to the cutting height because it's a sand-based construction that drained really effectively, and we needed to actually just slightly lift the cutting height so the pitch could recover and it could store the amount of nutrition it needed to be able to play the game on. It promotes lateral growth, which leads to improved grass density and grass coverage and root growth. So by mowing regularly, teaching the plants to tiller and get a lot more dense. There is couple of myths that this is only with certain grass species, but with your ryegrass, if you're getting a little bit more tiller in at the bottom, so you've got different stages of leaf, your first, your second, your third, you want your first to push out a little bit more, and by regular mowing, that's what you're encouraging to do. And obviously it maintains the pitch aesthetically, so you can see from the picture you get some nice stripes, especially if you've got a nice mower, which are available on the Football Foundation funding. If you want to speak to your county FA, if you don't have one and you'd like a nice new shiny mower and tractor, to be able to get some fancy stripes, which always amazes me how much that can change the impression of the pitch. If you walk up and you see some nice stripes, you think the pitch is great, and it's never the pitch's problem. It's always an easy thing to blame if the pitch just looks unkept. So in my research and my experience, cutting height, I think the optimum is 35 to 40 millimeter. I have known clubs at the moment, especially throughout this summer, that have been up at 50 millimeter. So if you go up to 50 millimeter, you should never remove more than a third of the plant. So you could actually come down from 50 to 40 millimeter just in one cut, and you wouldn't harm the grass plant. So in times of the drought and when temperatures got up, if you were at 50 millimeter, the plant prioritizes in summer trying to photosynthesize and build energy through its leaves. And if it's doing that, you're actually getting a better sward quality. So the more sward you've got, the more energy the plant can build. And you know, if you start mowing it lower than that, it requires more fertilizer inputs, it requires more nutrition. So you've got to put more nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, obviously being your macronutrients and your larger nutrients into the grass sward to be able to allow it to recover, and to be able to maintain it at that height. And if you're cutting it lower as well, it requires more water. So the pros and cons of your cutting guidance are you can have pitch cut at 20 to 25 mil, or you can have a pitch that doesn't cost as much, cut at a higher height, which if it's maintained properly and regularly groomed, surface groomed with something like spring tines or chain harrowing, it will not actually affect play that much. So you know, for the community level game, I would not expect to be, you know, it'd be great to be playing on the pitch that was cut at 20-25 mil, you know, the same standards that you would see in the elite game, even lower in some instances. But you know, they have big budgets. In the community game, grassroots game, the budgets are not obviously as large as those that are providing the quality of surface that you see in the EFL and the Premier League. So line marking. So line markings should be clear and visible, marked at the appropriate dimensions to suit the age group or the standard that you're playing with, marked with suitable line marking paint. I speak to many different people who have different opinions on marking paint. Some last longer, you know, could we have a wet winter? Could it be getting washed out as much? One thing I think with is if we do have a wet period and the line markings do start to wash out, is it potentially a time for those that have portable goals to start moving your pitches a little bit if you're fortunate enough to have space? I tend to find that prevents wear in your central areas. It prevents wear in your goal mouths, dishing, and it can reduce costs of those renovations that are really difficult to do. You know, if you wanted to repair your goal mouths this year, there was not much chance unless you had access to irrigation. Not every club does. So the potential to be able to move your pitches, to be able to allow you to prevent the damage in the first place is a great thing. These are little things called grass tufts. If no one's ever come across them, you can probably get them from your local amenity provider. They're really, really good if you're wanting to measure your pitch and just stick them in the ground, and then you know where you're marking to, and you don't have to start getting some string lines out every time. Well, you do have to get string lines out, but you don't have to start measuring as much. A little bit easier to do. But for initial marks at the moment, I'm seeing quite a lot of clubs use robotic line markers, no matter how big the site is, just because of the quality of the finish of the GPS, how straight those lines are. They surely do have a good effect. So line marking equipment, you've got your robotic markers. Those are becoming quite popular on the grants for those that have got 10 or more pitches. You've obviously got your pedestrian markers, your wheel transfer markers, and your spray line markers. Again, those are available on the Football Foundation grants if anybody would like to get new marker, especially for those that are maybe spray painting in other colours to accommodate for junior football. These are really good to have, and you can get multiple ones. The only thing is they're not available on their own, but just because of the cost of them, the pedestrian markers. That is the robotic line markers are, because they're a lot more expensive. But when you're paying, something from 500 to £1,500 for a line marker, it's really difficult to process. But it's a good opportunity to come in for further equipment should you need it. So line marking, burning in of line markings. I don't really see this as much as I used to. Typically, to be honest with you, it tends to be on clubs at sites that just looking to take over, that have historically been managed and maintained by local authorities. These can be quite dangerous. In some instances, they can be very dangerous, where I've seen where it kills the grass cover, the soil erodes, and you end up with depressions that are about 4 to 6 inches deep, and in some cases a foot wide. Absolute ankle breakers. And they are a clear hazard. Obviously not great for the environment when you're spraying a total herbicide, such as glyphosate, to kill off the grass. And I would not encourage this. There is no products that are actually legally approved for this, and it should be avoided, because any costs that you do actually spend on the on doing that, it basically, you can't reorientate your pitches, you can't move your pitches around. Well, you can, but you're going to have some nice burnt in lines in areas where you don't want them, and also as well, they are dangerous, and they're expensive to reinstate. So when in some cases, I've seen them where it's taken a couple of years because the soil is that contaminated, because it's been done that repetitively for many years. It takes quite a long time to actually get some growth back in there and get some life back into that soil that's been sprayed with the likes of glyphosate, which in some counties now is not approved for use. So the local authorities won't, unless it's actually for time saving, which sometimes we do find that. But yeah, no, I would strongly recommend avoiding burning in lines. Line marking paint as well is designed to actually stick to the grass, so that's how it's designed. It doesn't work by sticking to soil, so that's why if you've got burning lines and you're spraying it over the soil, it'll just wash off really quickly, because it doesn't stick to the soil, it sticks to the leaf itself of the grass. Decompaction. So following this year, really important that this is done over the next few weeks if you've got the budget to do it. Conditions are really good at the moment to be able to get in. So for those that are on clay-based soil, really important to be able to open up the soil. As you can imagine, what's happened is that the soil's dried, it's shrunk, and it's become compact. If it gets wet again, it's going to expand and it's going to become a quagmire. So if we can try and get in and open up that soil profile to allow a little bit of airflow, and mostly to develop root growth, to try and drive some of those roots down to avoid grasses getting kicked out. So this is a site that I went on a while ago. Some of you may have seen this image before. So you've got a compacted clay soil here, you can see on the left. So you've got a soil profile there of around 180 millimeters of a clay loam soil, and a bit of silt in there as well. That is a really compact soil. There is a couple of fractures around 100 mil, but not much water is getting through that. Whereas on the right hand side, this is a really good soil profile. That's what you can see here. Is this is a site that's had a quadruplay on, and the quadruplay has been going over it about 100 mil, but below that is really compact. So what's happening is when it rains, water just sits above the 100 mil mark. What actually needs to happen there is need to get a little bit deeper with their aeration tines. So compaction happens through play, through machinery driving over, and soils generally just become more and more compact over time. Especially those of you that potentially have not done this before. If you've just taken over a site, probably one of the biggest problems that I see for growth is that roots can't grow, plants can't get what they need because they can't move. They're growing laterally, they're not growing, they're not going down. And that is my fear for this year, is that I've just seen it on 2 sites I've been on today, the roots are actually growing out like that rather than down, which is poor anchorage. So as soon as kids start playing, if we get a bit of wet weather, the grass will start to lift, and you'll start to get a lot of divots quite easily. And then obviously that leads to a bobbly surface, that leads to complaints, and you start to lose your grass coverage. Then you start to get erosion, and then you start to get dishing in places like your goalmouths. So trying to keep on top of that aeration is really, really important throughout this year. So aeration is really, really good as well for thatch. So to be honest with you, thatch build up on established pitches. If you've got something like a quadruplay, I will, for those of you who wonder what one of those is, I will go through that at some point as I go through the call. On the left-hand side, you've got a nice controlled thatch layer. So that pitch there is receiving a couple of games a week. It's not really got much thatch build-up. The reason for that is because players are kicking it out. It's certainly in the central areas. Scarification is really good, but it's a really important practice really for, to be honest with you, this year I don't even know when you'd have had the chance to do it. It's been a really, really difficult year to do anything. So scarification this year alone would have been challenging, and that's the way to remove thatch. But you need something to be able to make it recover, because you're stressing out the surface, and you don't want to be stressing out the surface even more following when the grass is under stress from drought. So the controlled thatch layer is typically of something that I would see. If you're having 1 or 2 games a week, you may have a little bit more thatch build up. If you're having overplaying the pitches, it's very rare that you would see thatch. But to be honest with you, if you're concerned about thatch levels, then just get in contact with me, because the one on the right there, that was an old site that was a cricket outfield. Those are really, really prone to thatch build up. Because they don't really get much aeration. There's 20 mil of thatch on top of there. That actually acts as a sponge, so water can't actually get through. If it rains heavily, that one on the right there water's just going to sit on the surface. The soil's compact, it's not going to get through. It's going to lead to postponements. The one on the left, you can see that there's a lot more pore space. You can see there's a lot more room for air, nutrition, to be able to move. It's got a lot more life in it, because the thatch has been broken down, whereas on the right you can see there it's quite inert. There's not much life in it. There's not a lot going to happen, until some maintenance practices are. So people quite often ask me what thatch is. It's basically a spongy layer of dead grass clippings, or something that was once living that's then died. Could be any microorganisms in the soil. It could also be worms, etc., that die, and eventually they will feed back to the grass plant. But to do that, they need oxygen, and the only way to get oxygen into the soil is by decompaction, or scarification. So aeration, I've kind of touched on this already, but you can see there on the image. So what I'm seeing at the moment is the image on the right, and certainly on the couple of sites that I've been out today and the ones that have been out in the past. Compacted soil. It's been very drought prone, not really getting much access to water, nutrition, or anything that it is getting is in the top 30 to 40 millimeter. It's not really much deeper. Whereas you can see the image on the left, you've got some nice roots, you've got some primary, secondary roots, and you've got some fibrous roots coming off there. So you've got 3 different root systems that are all getting nutrition, and you can see the effects that has on the grass plant. So the grass plant on the left is nicely stood up, whereas the one on the right is starting to wilt because it's not really getting what it needs. So this is what you start to see on the surface effects, is the way that the grass plant actually grows. Its colour, you can see there, it's got on the right, it's got a little bit of yellow, a yellow tinge. So I've been out on site today, seen a couple of sites that have got this exact same symptom, where the grass plant's starting to yellow. It's not really getting what it needs. It needs the nutrition, and the life is down below where the roots need to be. So they need to get down there. The only way to do that is via aeration. So obviously doing this, you're creating some channels for water to move. As I say, increasing that airflow. Really, really important. If you're going to apply, a fertilizer, you can apply fertilizer, and you can put loads of nutrition in there that would extend root growth, such as phosphorus, for example. But when you're doing that, if it's not got nowhere to go, it's basically just like feeding something that's hitting a brick wall and it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and a bit like my belly when I went on an all-inclusive holiday. It's getting bigger and bigger and bigger, but I want allowing for undoing my belt. So yeah, it's that's the kind of way that it works, is that you need to be able to give it the space to grow. And it plays a big part in the breakdown of thatch because you're getting that oxygen into the soil. So it's reducing that thatch layer. And you're also getting a longer growing season. So at the moment, the air temperature is obviously higher than the ground temperature. This morning, I looked on an app that I have that gave me the soil temperature of 10.5 degrees, which is still growing conditions, but it could be warmer if we could get some aeration and get some of the air temperature that we've seen at the height of today. Although it certainly didn't feel like it at times when I was on the site. It was quite cold, quite windy, and it was yeah, certainly we are seeing a drop in the temperature. So yeah, it's a really important practice. And following the drought, it's the height of cut, which is a simple thing to change if you're in charge of your own maintenance, is to get that height of cut towards the 40mm or around the 40mm mark, and to try and see if you can get some aeration to allow those roots to grow. Otherwise, they're prone to pest damage, as I said, from Schaefer grubs that that I've seen twice today, and also as well they're at the chance of reducing the surface coverage because roots going to are weak, poor anchorage, and they may get kicked out easily. So this is a typical deep tine aerator. We've got the Vertidrain. There's a TerraSpike as well that are really good for aerating. So to try and open up those soils. You can see there the bottom image on the right, typical tine holes, roughly working to a depth of anywhere. It can be difficult, really. I say 200 to 330 mil. It can depend on your soil profile, what's underneath. So some clubs may only get 100 mil with it. And then they may be onto something like a limestone, or you may be on a landfill site and it may be difficult to get down that deep. And certainly in and around Sheffield, there's quite a few that are built on coal mine clippings. So yeah, if you can get a deep, it really is difficult to get that deep straight away. This is actually a site near my house in York. It's the top left one. So you can this was done just prior to the drought this year, so you can see the actual cracks that it's made, but not just the cracks that it's made down that line. Can you see my mouse, Leon? Yeah, so if you come down there, you can see the crack that it's made, but not just the crack it's made there, all these little fissures that it's made as it's come across, and you can see there's the second Vertidrain hole, and there's the other one there. So you can see how it's making those cracks within the surface, within the soil profile. So this machine typically works like a garden fork going in, heaving. It heaves and it creates those cracks and it creates those little fissures that you can see. So you've got here, this is another sample that I took. So you can see the root growth here. So that was down the side. So that basically is a Vertidrain, because it goes Vertidrain tine. As it goes in, it's heaved, and you can see here that this is some root growth that's come down. So these are all primary, secondary roots that have come off the back of Vertidraining. And you imagine now trying to kick out that grass up at the top here when they've got roots down here, it's going to be really hard to do when it's got the root depth and it's got that density. One thing to be conscious of when you're getting contractors is to ensure they're going at the right speed and the right depth. A good way to check the depth is just to get a pencil or a ruler and stick it in the hole, see how deep they are, the tine hole's actually gone. If you're ever conscious of that, and to get a tape measure and get the distance. If they've gone really high speed, Vertidraining typically affects about 10% of the surface. If you're going at high speed, you may only be affecting 5%. The quicker you go. To be honest with you, to do a pitch, you should be looking at roughly about 3 to 4 hours, depending on the size of it, for a full size pitch. So in terms of expectation from your contractor, one thing to bear in mind is that you cannot just ring somebody and they will come and do this. It tends to be, that contractors work on a basis of having a portfolio of clubs, and they'll come round and they'll do it at the times that suit, and the majority of them get the timings optimum. But good time to do it at the moment if you have the contacts and, you know, somebody with the machine. So linear decompaction, this works as a slit. So you can see it has like a knife action. So this knife action, it pretty much works like a vertidrain, but it kind of works as an earthquake effect. It shakes the surface. So you can see here on the image on the right where the slit goes in, it creates cracks, and that's what those cracks are. So it cracks the surface. The image on the left is one that was done in the spring. I would avoid this after February, certainly after the last couple of years. Certainly after this year, and a couple of years ago. This was a couple of years ago, 2023, where somebody had double passed with it. And you can see the effects that had had. It started to dry. They pretty much just lifted out, so the surface it had no stability. And you could have picked them out like a jigsaw puzzle and put them back. It created a really dangerous surface, because once it gets past February and you're on clay soils, they start to shrink. And that's pretty much what had happened here. You'd created a weakness in the soil, and then it started to shrink. So these, again, range from a depth of 170 to 160. It's really difficult no matter what aeration. The first time you aerate, you might not get as deep as you want to do. You may get deeper and deeper over time, and start off shallow and work your way over a period of time to get to your optimum depth. But both of these don't cause any disturbance. If you can alternate them. This could be done now, for example, instead of a vertidrain, and then you could do your vertidrain. Vertidrain doesn't cause as many weaknesses in the soil. That can still go and prolong into the spring as we start the growing season. It just may have an effect on the size of tines that you use. But these are two important practices, certainly if we have a dry playing season. So aeration, slitting and spiking, this is a little different to decompaction. So decompaction, as I said, is when so you've got the shock wave, which was the linear one, which shakes the ground, obviously creates cracks and it creates all the fissures. Then you've got the vertidrain, TerraSpike, some form of deep tine aeration with a heave that's actually moving the soil, so you're getting some movement. Whereas with aeration and slitting and spiking, you don't get that movement within the soil. You are literally just stabbing holes in the ground. You aren't pulling that fork back and getting that land movement like you would do with those bits of kit. They're a lot heavier. They cost a lot more money. They cost a lot more to maintain. Whereas something like aeration, slitting and spiking, you could do at your own club, and some of you may already do so, with, as I said, the quadruple, maybe a deep slitter, or you might have a spiker that allows you to just go over the surface it won't drive as deep. It's not PTO driven, so basically it's the linear aerator and the vertidrain are both driven with a PTO that drives into the ground and heaves. Whereas this is just trailed along and just hooked up on a 3-point linkage. So common methods here. So you've got your deep slitter, which you can see, which is this is a Sisis one. There's also an SCH one at the bottom here. So these are knives that drive into the ground. These are available on the Football Foundation funding, and range from somewhere from £4,000 to about £7,000. And 75% funding is available for them. So what these actually do is open up the surface, so they really complement your decompaction work. So if you're not doing any form of additional aeration, what will happen is you've got your top kind of 100 mil. So let's say you vertidrain to 200-300 mil. Your top 100 mil will close up again, but the below that will still stay open. Whereas these machines allow you to connect again to that vertidrain hole, because once you start getting worms, you start getting play, natural soils, movement, you know, the weather conditions, we get a little bit of rainfall, it sits on the surface, the pressure, the holes start to close at the top. And what happens then is that nothing can actually get through. You're not getting any airflow, your airflow ceases, you're not getting any water through, so the surface caps off again. So these are really good for breaking that cap. The machine at the top left there is a Toro Procore, which is just a general machine that is kind of a spiker. To be honest, that's more used in the national step pyramid and in the elite game. That normally drives down to around 100 mil, and it's just an aeration technique that has minimal surface disturbance. So slitting and spiking, if you've got a spiker every 4 to 6 weeks throughout from now. Again, the slit tines can cause that weakness in the soil and can cause the soil to start shrinking and swelling again. So I would cease slitting around February time to make sure you've not got that weakness in that soil to cause what we saw in that previous image, because this still does have a similar effect. So this is pretty common, I would say, now for clubs that are on the funding. Quite a lot of clubs have got these. Really good for those clubs with drainage systems, because if you're doing some form of aeration, you need to be getting to the depth of the gravel layer. So I've had a lot of clubs, well, last year, clubs coming to me saying, oh, we had a terrible year the year before, our drainage system wasn't working. It tends to be because nothing's actually getting through to the gravel layer, the layer where the water needs to hit to be able to be relieved, and it's just sat on the surface. These go down to 300 mil, so you can actually hit that gravel layer. Whereas if we move on to something like the surface groomer, you may get 100 mil. You're not going to hit that gravel layer if you do have drainage. These are an excellent machine and are my must-haves for any community grassroots football club. Being able to get out there weekly, fortnightly, monthly, to be able to groom your pitches when you're not mowing, once growth has ceased. Really good for post-match repair. Basically what they're designed to do: at the back, the brush, so to stand the grass up; the roll, to be able to give you your stripes. They've got some tines at the front, so the tines will go along and just nicely help repair any divots. And then you've got the slitter at the front, which will drive into the soil to be able to connect into them verti-drain holes again. So you're doing it's really called a combination tool, 4-in-1. That is a quadruplay. There's many other machinery dealers that do different models. All are pretty much like for like. It's just making sure that it's robust enough. If you've got 10 pitches, you want to make sure that it's robust to be able to take driving over a really bobbly surface, and it's not going to fall to bits after 5 minutes. But the majority of them are very good. Really easy to hitch up to a tractor. Again, these are retail somewhere from about 4,000 to about 7,000, 8,000 pounds. And are available 75% funding through the Football Foundation. Speak to your county FA if you're interested in potentially looking at getting one of them, or come speak to me. But these are a really good machine, and are a must-have for me if you've got the time and you've got the capacity. I appreciate everybody doesn't. So you've got, at the moment, I've just been to a pitch today. The brush on that would have worked great for dispersing worm casts. It was covered in worm casts. If you had something like that, drove over it, you could only just put the brush down if you want to, and the knife tines at the front, and you could just go along and you could just brush the surface and clear all the worm casts off. They were nice and dry on the surface. It was windy. Surface had dried really well. But yeah, these are really good for post-match repairs, and when you kind of see people, not really a replacement for it, but certainly a help towards it. When you see guys out on the elite game with the fork going round, these kind of do it as a tool and help post-match repairs. Really good preventative measure for preventing them renovations for being as intense as they need to be if you're regularly grooming your grass throughout the playing season. Sorry. So fertilizer is a huge part of obviously providing grass growth. There won't be many clubs on here removing clippings, but if you are, then you would need to double your fertilizer input, I would imagine. But you would gather that information from a soil test or a soil analysis, which you can get from local contractors, amenity suppliers. If you are interested in one of them, come and speak to me after, and I can get you to get one. But tends to be honest with you, most clay-based soils just need adequate nutrition, a bit of a fertilizer boost, especially I hope clubs have thought about this post the drought. Sorry, so the drought's been so obviously the grass will need feeding to allow it to be able to grow again and to allow it to be able to recover. So you've got nitrogen, which is really, really good for you saw that image before, poorly aerated soils where you could see that the grass was wilting and it was yellow. Really, really good for recovery and providing a little bit of growth. We haven't got much growth time left, so trying to take advantage of that. As I said, soil temperatures are at 10 degrees. It will take in nutrition and it will provide you with a bit of growth. I know I put fertilizer on my lawn at home about 4 weeks ago, and it's still growing really, really well. It looks really, really thick and it looks really, really dense, and it's recovered from the drought. And I didn't use a hose pipe throughout throughout the summer. I tried to avoid wasting any water. My water bill's high enough. So I've been having a daughter that likes to go in the bath. So yeah, it's really, really important moving forward that you do provide the soil with adequate nutrition and try and get as much proactive recovery as you possibly can. You've got phosphorus, which I discussed earlier, which is really key for tillering. It's really key for driving root growth. To be honest with you, majority of soils in clay-based soils, obviously I cannot speak for all, but just need minimal phosphorus. They don't need to be, you're not looking for a lot of it unless you've got a deficiency, but you wouldn't know that without a soil analysis. And potassium is really, really good for stress control. I know prior to the drought, at the club that I volunteer at, I made sure that a potassium, a fertilizer feed that was high in potassium went down because I knew that it was going to be warm in the summer. So that little bit of growth that we got during the springtime, I managed to take advantage of it, luckily, but it certainly didn't look great as it came out of the drought because it had only lasted so long and it can only take it up when it's wet. So yeah, I did enough to kind of recover, but really, really struggled and is now in a good place. So a basic soil analysis is it doesn't look at nitrogen. The reason for that is because it's really hard to measure, but it looks at phosphorus, potassium, magnesium, and your pH of your soil. So whether it's acidic, alkaline, or neutral, ideally hoping for somewhere around a neutral pH for ryegrass for a football pitch. But if you want to understand what you're needing in terms of nutrition, a soil analysis is a good idea. I've always been quite a big advocate and for I mean I worked at a sports club that was 1 mile away from another. We needed 2 completely different fertilizer plants because we worked on completely different land. It's not like one fits all. But yeah, most people will offer this is a free low cost service. So it's worth speaking to people if you are looking for a soil analysis. Good time to get one done at the moment ahead of what will be a chaotic playing season, no doubt. So one thing that I'm really keen on educating people is there's not just one fertilizer product. There's many different suppliers. I've picked off some here, just to kind of give you an idea of what's out there. So you can apply these at a range of rates. So typical rates range from 20 grams per square meter to 50 grams. What's your contractor applying it at? So if your contractor is fertilized, how much are you actually getting value for your money? You could go along and you could put 6 bags on. You could go along and you could put 15 bags on the pitch. How many bags are they actually applying? What are you getting for your money? And another one is, what's the release? So this Sierra Blend one here, that's 5 to 6 months. You've got a couple here that are this one's kind of 6 to 8 weeks. Then you've got something that's giving you 12 weeks here. This here is a pony feed, so it's for paddocks. Great if you've got horses and you're trying to feed them, but maybe not so great for football pitches, although it does have its uses in certain instances. But you can see here, so these numbers, so as you come along here, you've got 977, so that means it's got 9% nitrogen and 7% phosphorus, 7% potassium. This one here, 12% nitrogen, 4% phosphorus, 8% potassium. And then you've got a percentage there of iron. This one here is 28% nitrogen, 5% phosphorus, 5% potassium. Then again, you've got a percentage of iron. Iron's really good for greening up the surface. Commonly used as a pre-game feed in the elite game to make them look really, really shiny. So when you're watching telly so when you're watching the football on telly, they've normally put something on that's really high in iron, calcium, and magnesium to really, really green up the surface and make it look as well as they do and they're presented at the top level. So these are really, really, really important kind of education piece around what are you kind of getting for your money. The one thing with these quick release fertilizers is that the release via moisture only. So if we get a really big downpour in the playing season and it keeps raining, the grass keeps growing, and you can keep saying, well, I can't get on my pitches, I can't cut them. You know, I saw it last year when it rained really, really heavily, and people came out with the growing season and nobody could get on the pitches to cut them because they were that wet. But they had to be baling off grass when it came to the time when they wanted to could actually be on them. Some people were actually, that's not an exaggeration, people were actually getting farmers to bale off the grass because it had grown that much, because people had put quick release fertilizers on and it had all just released when it's wet and they had no control over the cutting. Whereas something like this, 5 to 6 months, that releases via temperature, so it needs optimum temperature and it needs optimum moisture. So if we get a really big downpour and it's cold weather, it won't grow unless the temperature is sufficient enough. So the temperature, obviously, if the temperature was sufficient enough, the ground wouldn't be as wet. So yeah, these are really, really important education piece around this, and I probably could talk about this all day, just the subject alone with this slide on here. But there is many different products out there. There is many different fertilizer distributors. Soil analysis can be a good place to start. I mean, if you're going to use a Sierra blend fertilizer like this, you know, you could do 2 applications a year. You might not have the money to do that. You might just want to do one. But I know quite a lot of contractors that do use things like 5 to 6 months, and they will apply it now and it'll take them through till the end of the playing season. And it's just one application. And then some people don't put any fertilizer down in the summer. They don't really feel the need to. You know, is there any need to? Nobody's playing on them. Are you just encouraging yourself to get work and go down there and regularly keep on top of them? And it's really challenging as it is. So yeah, there's lots of different fertilizer products out there, but it's worth getting a soil analysis done. If not, it's worth speaking to your contractor, finding out what they're applying, what rate they're applying it at. So goal mouth repairs. This is a one that, I mean, this was a pitch that I saw last year over in West Riding. Someone had played literally one game in the conditions that they shouldn't have been. There was no recovery from that. That was in November. No growing conditions, really, really difficult to get anything back. And all it takes is one lapse in communication, one misunderstanding, the game goes ahead and the pitches are completely ruined. And it's only downhill from there until we get some growth back. And getting some growth back this year was really, really challenging. If you do come across areas that need goal mouth repairs, get some top dressing sand, apply some top dressing sand, shovel it on. Sand is obviously an absorbent, will help dry up the surface a little bit, will help keep it level. Prior to that, maybe go over with a hand fork if you've got time, if you've got capacity. If you don't, you don't. But it's a really good proactive way just to go out with a hand fork and just try and allow a little bit more root depth, get a little bit more anchorage. You know, you might just think, oh, I ain't got the money to fertilize my pitch, but we can put a bit of fertilizer down by hand and we can just go around and just chuck some around the goal mouth to try and get a little bit of growth, you know, before the growing conditions drop off. So there is different type. I'm going to go on to different types of sand after this. So there is different types of sand that are available, and it's important that you use the right one because you can stunt grass growth. You can also lock up the soil. And I've seen people using all different kinds of sands in my time in this role, but there is only certain types that we're wanting to use because you could actually be causing more problems than actually helping the pitch. Recommendation typically is to use a medium or medium coarse grade of sports sand. It's really expensive to get sports turf sand at the moment. The costs of it are going up. There's not many quarries. I'll blame HS2 for taking all the sand from most of the quarries, and I know there's quite a lot of planning in for quarries in and around the area at the moment, so we can get access to sand. But the price of sand has gone up through the roof. Really, really is expensive. It already was, and it's getting even more expensive. So root zone sports turf sands. So when buying sand, if you are looking to buy it, come in a range of different particle sizes. I don't want to go too much into this because, again, it's a subject on its own, but just kind of, it's more to highlight, you know, these different types of root zone. So you've got things here, 70-30. So this actually, the 70 is actually the sand part. So this 70 parts sand, 30% made up of silt and clay. And then you've got, you know, your soils part, and then you've got 80-20, 90-10, and then you've got USGA, which is also as well FIFA standards, which is used in the elite game. So you've got kind of your different particle sizes here of what. So I'm just kind of highlighting here, any sand is not, you know, if you've got really fine sands, so if your content here of percentage of fine sands is up near 50-60%, you're just going to block up your soil. You put that into a clay-based soil, it's just going to lock it up even more. All them silts and clays are just going to, you're not actually doing anything more than you may as well not bother. It's a waste of money, and it's very, very expensive. So what you can see here is you've got different, basically water will move through it at different rates depending on the makeup of the soil here, where it says hydraulic conductivity, so how fast it moves through. And obviously, as you see in the high end of the elite game, it drains as fast as possible. So there is a lot of different sands, and there are a lot, but you can usually get these from your amenity provider if you do want a couple of ton of sand to be able to use every now and then. And they will kind of guide you on what you want. But as I say, normally looking for a medium or coarse sand, something that's got larger particle sizes that is actually going to help keep your soils open rather than cause more problems. So building sand is an absolute no-go. It's typically mined from riverbeds, lakes and streams. Don't want that anywhere near grass pitches. It is really fine. So as you saw there, you know, the particle sizes, you've got the really, really low fine sands clogging up your soil profile. I went to a pitch not so long ago that had used this in the central areas, and it had created an absolute bog. They basically just created a pan across the middle of the football pitch where they put it down. Nothing could get through it. So to get that back out, we had to carry out a really, really expensive aeration program to be and actually top dressing with the right sand. And it really did cost them a lot of money to put that right, because they'd gone and used building sand thinking, oh, well, it's sand, it'll do. It's you know, surely it's going to do some good. Not always the case. It's, you know, do not, you know, grit sand as well. I've seen that used where people have put grit sand down that's typically used for building. Way away from anything like that. Normally really high in things like calciums, and can be basically can contaminate grass and really affect your growth as well. So stay away from that if you're thinking about doing your goal mouths or anywhere and you want to top them up. Then yeah, please stay away from building sand. Clay sand, this is one of the worst. This is really high in fine particles as well, so this will clog up. I've seen this used quite a few times, actually, probably more than building sand, but you can see it's got 70% fine sand. Do not want that when we're looking for that coarse or medium sand. There's hardly any in, just going to cause you problems. Stay away from things like fine sand, from things like clay sand when you're wanting to top dress. So only be using specific sports turf sands, not any old sand, if you're looking to try and attend to certain areas. Overseeding. Oh, just over an hour. All right for me now. Overseeding. So there's different types of grass seed. Some are used for the general amenity sector. Most of them, to be honest with you, cross over into sports turf. It just depends what type of cultivars you want. So people say, "Oh, use ryegrass," but normally you will get a mixture of 2 or 3 cultivars within there. They would have different specs. So, for example, one could be really resistant to drought. One could provide you really good aesthetics like that. Could green up. One could be resistant to diseases, etc. So you get different types of cultivars within there. You know, some don't like, you know, are really good for shaded areas, typically used in football stadiums where, you know, the shaded areas. So you can see here, so this is a football pitch that was newly grown in on a construction project that we worked on a couple of years ago, and you can see the line where the seed was drilled, and the grasses on the right are the native grasses of the actual site. So more your meadow grasses. It was on quite a moorland area, so there was quite a lot of fescue grasses as well. So you had different types of grasses, but you can see there the effects of the ryegrass. Ryegrass is what we want to use for football. It's really hard wearing, really, really good root growth, really quick at establishing, and it's really good for recovery. So these are some good makes that are kicking around that I commonly see used by clubs. So you've got Johnson Sports Seed, Hurrells, Barenberg, to pick off free, are really, really popular. You know, if you're wanting to use seed, you know, do not go to B&Q, do not go to your local garden centre, get some proper sports turf seed. I see a lot of mimics and a lot of sold at DIY stores selling types of seed and selling types of fertilizer. Ensure if you're going to buy proper products to get the right results, you need to speak to amenity providers. There's experts out there in the industry that are on the road daily that will help you. Please get in contact if you do want to have some guidance for that. So timing for overseeding, you've got sowing times and soil temperatures, optimum sowing windows. So the bottom graph here, the green one, this is ryegrass, what we're looking. So you can see optimum sowing time, typical year, back end of March to late November. With soil temperature still up at 8 degrees, low daylight levels, it's going to take a while to establish. But if you're looking for, you know, high wear areas, get some germination sheets, you could potentially be in a position to be able to seed. I've been recommending people buy seeders if they possibly can. If you've got equipment and you're looking to buy a seeder and you want to buy a seeder, you know, you can then dictate when your renovations are. So that end of season renovations thing, that's a subject that I touched on earlier. If you want to potentially get a seeder, and so that, you know, you can seeders range anything from £5,000 to £15,000, you know, potentially get your own to be able to do your own renovations and apply the seed yourself, then please contact your county FA or contact me if that's something you're looking to do. It just means that potentially you can work with the weather and you're not reliant on a contractor that may come out when conditions aren't really suitable. So you've got your optimum window there. You know, I wouldn't recommend going out and seeding a full pitch at this time of year, but really good for attention areas. You know, if you've got a couple of bags of seed in, get a bit of fertilizer, a bit by hand, get a bit of seed, put it down, rest the area, put some germination sheet on. You might be surprised that you may get a bit of a strike from that seed. So it's just kind of opening up, but I would really, really avoid, to be honest with you, at the moment, staying away from renovations in June and July, certainly going into next year, you know, try and, you know, that spring growth if we get it, and that autumn growth. The autumn growth for me over the last few years has been the best time to carry out renovations. September, October. We've seen it this year, we saw it last year, I saw it the year before and the year before that. September and October provided the best growing season before the clocks go back, ideally. Carrying out those renovations, or late August, early September has been, I've seen the best results. I know that Leicester City Sports Turf Academy, they are now, that's when they're carrying out their renovations. So Leicester City Sports Turf Academy have a grassroots contracting arm that they work in the community, and they are doing their renovations now, September time, back end of August, September, at all their clubs, because that's when they see that the timing is optimum, and I would tend to agree with them at the moment. So drainage, for those that have got drainage, I quite often go to clubs, they'll say my pitch is fluid, it's not where's your outfall? Do you have any historic drawings? Do you understand your drainage system? Is it kept clean? Has it collapsed? Is it maintained? Do you have it flushed out? You know, it might come to a time where you can't get a jetter onto a pitch and you can't actually check it. You can't get cameras up it to be able to see if it's blocked. Really, really good. If you can, to be able to be proactive, make sure this was one where I opened up in the middle picture where I opened up an outfall pipe that had just been buried. Nothing was even coming out of it. And as soon as I opened it, that's what happened. It just all gushed out and it was all just backing up the system. And within a few hours, the pitches had dried off. Because it had started to move some, maybe not a few hours, actually, it was a few days. The pitches had actually started to move some water and get rid of it off the surface. But this is a typical silt trap in a drainage chamber that's not been maintained. Loads of silt at the bottom. You can see the silt's backing up the pipe. The one on the right is a blocked pipe that had collapsed. And we found that by just simply jetting pipe to find out it was blocked, unblocked it, and the drainage system was functioning again. So when drainage systems aren't working, it's typically down to malfunction, especially those that have been installed within maybe the last 20 years, maybe 30 years if you're lucky. Then yeah, if they're not functioning, it's worth checking. Don't wait to react. Go out if you get a chance, have a walk over your site, think, where does my outlet go? Where does my drains go? Is it clear? Do I need to stream around the outlet? Do I need to make sure that, you know, all the water's has got a path to be able to get out into the ditch or into the watercourse, wherever it may be going. So what to avoid? Spraying weed killer during the playing season. I have seen that. This is aeration, decompaction actually at the top image here that was carried out when it was wet, just creating loads of little rain gauges in the soil. I would avoid doing that. As you can see, that's made the surface worse and not any better. Certainly not going to enhance recovery, and it's just made a mess. The image at the bottom is playing a game when the conditions aren't right. I understand not all of you are in control, but if you are in control or you've got any form of kind of stance in way of actually persuading people, educating people. I mean, for me, I'd like to see more tuition for coaches and for referees to understand playing conditions and playing pitches. I think that's probably the next step, is teaching people a little bit more about etiquette. You know, spending all this money, the program's working, there's millions and millions of pounds gone in, but we need to protect that investment. And one game, leaving the pitch like that, it's a long way back and are very costly, very costly for the club. Do not use heavy rollers on football pitches. Stay away from them. The quadruplay or the combination grooming tool has a light little heavy roller at 500 kilograms. Really, really nice to be able to just go over the surface. No more than that. You don't want to be using big heavy rollers. It just compacts the surface and undoes all the aeration work that you may potentially be doing. And sometimes it's just better to let nature take its course. We've seen that over the last few weeks. Pitches are starting to recover. You know, try and look and see if you can get some portable goals if you don't already have them. I think they're absolutely brilliant and are a game changer for grassroots game, is allowing people to be able to maneuver the goal mouths a little bit more, maybe have some training goals. I went to a club last week that got some training goals and put them in a little area that wasn't marked out, trying to, you know, allow people to be able to still play, who were turning up at the playing fields and wanting to just kick a ball around, but not destroying the goal mouths. And I don't really need to tell the people on this call to only play on pitches when conditions are suitable. It's more about educating the far and wide, which is difficult at times. Certainly from my aspect, and I know that from being in sport for over 20 years, I've had some interesting conversations over my time, and I sympathise with you if you're in that situation. But try and do the best you possibly can to try and help maintain the pitch quality, and there's some really good work going on up and down the county. I've seen some excellent stuff over the time in this role, and more so, you know, the encouragement and the kind of drive that people have, it blows me away. So keep up the good work. Pitch power is coming now into the end of the window for the autumn season, and we're about to go into the in-season one on the 1st of November. So that will be full-on football season mode. A reminder that you will be due a pitch power inspection if you are on the funding from somewhere between the 1st of November and the 31st of March, where I will, or my team will produce your report, and that'll get played back to you. But it is available for all sports as well, for football, rugby, cricket. So if you do have any other sports, please consider that. But thank you very much. I don't really know how many questions I've got, and I think I've been a little bit, an hour and 15 minutes. I wasn't too bad there, was I?
Banging what I predicted.
And I think nobody left, which is pretty impressive.
Yeah, that always helps.
Yeah.
People dialing in on while they're in the cars or just listening at home. Like I say, we've recorded this as well, so you can look back at anything. Thank you for that, Chris, as always. Obviously, a lot of information there. We will share all the slides, the recording, like I said, so you can go back to it, listen to bits and pieces. As Chris said, I said at the start, myself from Sheffield and Hampshire, as well as a range of other county affairs across sort of the North East region. Please do reach out to your equivalent if you haven't got any specific questions. And Chris looks after all those 6 counties, so he's our sort of source, our guru, like I said, to support with specific queries or issues, challenges, or just experience and knowledge that he's got to help you guys out. with the sides, whether you're on the grass pitch maintenance funding, accessing equipment, doing stuff yourself, or working with contractors. We know every site is different, so we can't paint them all with the same brush. So yeah, bespoke support is definitely needed, but general knowledge on these workshops is great, and we will continue to do them as people want, and we seem to keep getting good numbers, which is great. We will hang around for a little bit. If there's any questions, please do use the chat function, the Q&A. But like I said, there's opportunities to reach out to the office as well. Might be getting some. We've not had many throughout, but I know you can see the chat function.
Must have answered all the questions.
So like,
has one popped up, Chris, just in the chat. So it's from Tim at Blackfine. After a game when the pitch has gouges some slide tackles, what would you advise the best thing to do in terms of repairing those?
So there's two different things you can do. It depends what you've got. The quadruplay is really, really good for standing that grass back up, because when somebody slide tackles, it just lays all the grass down, and it smears all the grass with soil, which tends to then start to discolour because it doesn't get any light. So trying to stand that back up again to allow rain to actually wash it off the leaf. So the quadruplay is a really good thing to have. If you're not fortunate enough to have a quadruplay, then a stiff brush and to brush to brush up the grass, and get a fork and go over the pitch and fork up the soil, like with a heave, like I mentioned with a verted range. Go down with a fork like that and then give it a little bit of a heave. But yeah, a stiff brush is really, really good. A really good tool actually. If you have one, it's an excellent post match repair tool.
Any other questions, guys? Just like to, yeah, get a bit of background noise off you, Chris. Then I don't know if you're having your tea or what. Maybe.
Sorry, I think it was me typing.
Fair play. No worries.
Does anybody have any other questions? I'm happy to answer them.
As I said,
But
loads of information thrown at you there, so there might be questions that come up later this evening, tomorrow, or the week after. Please use this as that resource. That's what we're here for as County Affairs, GMA, Pitch Advisory Service. Less, but like I said, we've been out on a few site visits today. That option is there as well. We have certain days with Chris as County FAs to get out and about to sites and do some bespoke stuff. So yeah, please let us know if that's something that you are interested in.
Taking a very long time processing. Hi Sal, I would leave that with me and I'll pick it up with you and Rach offline.
Yeah,
I'll
grants aren't a common one that goes in. We're getting more and more, but they can have a bit of a delay on them sometimes. But if that has been numerous weeks, then yeah, just let us know. We can access the interim between that or Chris can.
Yeah. Cheers, Sal. No worries.
Anything else, guys? Otherwise, I'll let you enjoy the rest of your evening. Obviously, thank you for joining. The recording will go after probably next week alongside the slide deck.
Yeah.
And we have got 2 more workshops this season as well. You want to touch on them potentially?
Yeah, so I've got one coming up in January. Tend to do them the last week of the last Thursday of the month. So I've got one in January and one in March. So the one in January is going to look. So last year, the January one, I did look at managing pitches in the current climate, but this year I'm just going to look at managing pitches on a budget based on the questions I've had over this year. So people have been asking me what's the best we can do with the money. So I'm going to discuss that, and then the final one will be end of season renovations. But on that one, I'll have to decide what the content is based on what my research has been over the last couple of years.
What the season plays out.
Yeah,
definitely. And please, we're continuously reviewing this program as a team. So we've chopped and changed it and shaped it over the past few seasons. When we started doing this across numerous kind of phase, we come together as a group towards the end of each season to look at what we're doing for the next season off feedback. So whether it's in the chat function now or offline or just reaching out to us elsewhere, please do let us know if there's any specific workshops you want to see, whether that is in person or if it's online, stuff like this. that we can throw in.
We've had one question come in. Sorry, me and Leon are sat opposite each other at the table here. We've had one question come in. Sorry, Leon. It's would you recommend earthquake or vertidraining more? I think the earthquake at this time of year is really, really good. I think it's really important. But vertidraining, obviously, you can carry that out all year round. So you could carry out vertidraining every month if you wanted to, if you've got one yourself. But due to staff shortages at work, you find it really difficult to keep on top of. Obviously, for yourselves, it's wanting to be something that's quick. So I don't know if you've got a deep slitter, but that's a lot quicker process. If you vertidrain or your earthquake every 2 or 3 months, and then you can replace that by potentially slitting to be able to give you a little bit more time because it's a lot quicker process. I do like the vertidrain, but I also think earthquaking once a year is typically enough, really. If you wanted to do it twice a year, you could, but vertidraining for me would take priority because it's historic credibilities within the industry and what it's done. It's a great innovation and have saved someone walking over the pitch with a fork for hours on end. So yeah. Do you know of any contractors in Leeds area for vertidraining, please? Yes, I do. Do you want to pick it up with me on my email, Jamie? And I'll be in touch. I'll put my email above in the chat. I'll drop it on again if you want. Yeah, if you want to email me across and just let me know whereabouts in the Leeds area you are, I'll fire some over. I know Tom, you've got a brochure as well, haven't you, for contractors that work in and around your area. So yeah, potentially fire that over to you. Some contact details on. Brill, I'll see you at Saltex. Yeah, I am speaking at Saltex as well. If anybody's going, be nice to have some support for that speech. So yeah, that'll. Speaking about grass, surprisingly enough.
Really?
Yeah. So brilliant. Right. Well, thank you all very much for your time. That pretty much rounds that up. And thanks for the support. And if anyone has any questions, please do get in touch. But yes, we will terminate the call, and the recording will be made available and the slides as well. But thank you very much.
Yeah.
Take care.
Thanks everyone.
See you later.
Bye.